I am Joshua William Gelb, and welcome to Theater in Quarantine. It's Thursday, April 29th, and it's 7 o'clock here in New York City. Thanks for tuning in and joining me for Deep Breath. All the different ways Commodore Matthew Peiyi could have died before opening Japan, but didn't. By Julia Izumi. Presented by Theater in Quarantine and New Georges. I want to share a couple of things before we get started. First, what you are about to see is live. This is not a film or a pre-recorded broadcast. This is happening right now in a closet in my apartment and in Julia's apartment in the financial district. Now, it's been a year since I converted the closet behind me into Theater in Quarantine, and along with my collaborators and my co-creative director, Katie Rose McLaughlin, who also co-directed this piece tonight, I want to say thank you for tuning in and helping to make this project a huge success. Now, if you like what you see tonight, please feel free to give us a donation. We rely on donations from our viewers. Wow, that sounds familiar. So big or small, you can do that at any point during the show, directly in the chat, or through our donation link, which you can find in the description below the video, which takes you to Fractured Atlas, where you can make a tax-deductible donation. Any and all proceeds go directly to the artists whose work you're about to see tonight. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date on all things TiQ. All right, I think we're almost ready. Tonight's show is going to be approximately 35 minutes. If you want to say hi to Julia, Katie Rose, Caroline, or myself, please stay tuned after the show for a brief chat with us about our process and the work. Well, let's get started. I'm going to take a brief 1-minute break so I can get into places. Thank you again, and enjoy all the different ways that Commodore Matthew Peiyi could have died before opening Japan, but didn't. Matthew Calbraith Peiyi was born in 1794. At that time, the child mortality rate in the white settler population of North America was pretty high. About 46% of children did not make it to their 5th birthday. This was mostly due to the highly contagious diseases of childhood, which included scarlet fever, diphtheria, diarrhea of infancy, and, oh, Johnny, I don't know what to do with that bloody cough you have, but maybe it has something to do with the infected scab on your knee. Maybe the best thing to do is amputate your leg. Whoops, I guess maybe amputating your leg wasn't the best answer. So sorry, your cough still hasn't gone away. Peiyi and his 7 siblings all lived well past their 5th birthday, which was probably due to a lot of wealth and a lot of luck. Also maybe growing up in Rhode Island. Sea air really is good for your health. Anyway, the point is, it was highly likely for him to catch a highly contagious disease of childhood. One particularly severe outbreak of yellow fever in Philadelphia started due to the 1793 arrival of white French enslavers from Haiti, who were fleeing the Haitian Revolution. So even on an already colonized territory, a different colonizer brought even more disease. The 1793 outbreak started a series of yellow fever epidemics along the East Coast and throughout the next few decades, any of which Peiyi could have encountered in his youth. Oh, by the way, when the white French enslavers arrived in Philadelphia, the city wanted them to quarantine for 2 weeks in case they carried diseases, but they couldn't figure out a way to enforce it. I'm just thinking a young Matthew Peiyi liked to take walks in the woods of Rhode Island, and a big rock just could have, fallen on top of him at any moment. So a young Peiyi is on a stroll in the woods, and he's like, I'll take a nap on this mossy green, because I treat everywhere I go like it's my personal backyard. And this moose is also on a stroll and just, squashes him like a bug. A young Peiyi is on a stroll in the woods, which he really should stop doing, by the way. It's clearly very dangerous. And he puts his hands on the remains of a splintered tree. And he's, just hanging out. Well, and then a rabbit runs out of the bushes and scares him, and he moves so suddenly that his hand just... Ow! Ooh. Yikes. Okay, a big splinter is very painful, but would that really kill him? Yeah. He pulls the splinter out, and it's just like blood everywhere. Peiyi didn't actually spend most of his life in the woods. He spent it at sea. All the men in Peiyi's family were Navy men, and Peiyi joined himself at the age of 15. I don't know how well he swam, but I can't imagine it being very well. I mean, have you seen his face? This one almost really did happen. Peiyi was on the USS President during the War of 1812, and an opposing shot hit one of the ship's cannons, which then exploded and then killed several men. In reality, Peiyi was only injured, but this explosion could have killed him if he was just a few inches closer. If he didn't have all that luck. God damn it. But in that case, he technically would have died by lack of luck. No? Okay. I thought cabin fever is exclusively afflicting those living on ships, because in the 1996 musical comedy Muppet Treasure Island, the entire crew sings a song about how they all have cabin fever. The song is called Cabin Fever. Cabin fever can actually strike any person who's in an isolated or confined situation for a long period of time. But that includes people on Navy ships. Cabin fever is not a life-threatening disease itself, but those afflicted could be led to irrational decisions that could potentially threaten their life or the life of the crew with whom they are confined, according to Wikipedia. I don't know what Perry's favorite food was, but it could have been shrimp. Nasty people really like shrimp. And shrimp can be deadly, especially if it's an allergy you unknowingly develop later in life. Shark attacks are generally more common in the Atlantic Ocean, which is where Perry sailed for most of his time in the 1810s and 20s, particularly during the period where he was working for the American Colonization Society. Now, if you hear that name and think to yourself, oh boy, that sounds like a messed up society that masquerades as being abolitionist but is actually still very racist, you would be right. At this time, Perry was in command of the USS Shark, which is like so ironic, considering he could have been killed by one. I do want to be clear, sharks, like any animal, rarely attack unprovoked. I don't know. I get the feeling sharks are generally anti-racist, and Perry's appearance in their waters on the way to Liberia was provocation enough. Or, maybe a kraken attack is more realistic. Yeah, sure. In 1822, Perry was sent to physically claim Key West. This involved sailing to the island, taking an American flag, sticking it in the ground, and striking a pose. Obviously. But we all know the weather down there is unpredictable. Just checking. Any particular fire, or...? Yeah, sure. Oh, I guess random fires happen all the time, but for one to kill him, it must have been some fire. Hey! 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 Perry was a portly man with a hefty appetite for food and drink. Mostly drink, but let's focus on the food for now. From 1845 to 1847, Perry fought in the Mexican-American War. He fought most of his battles on his gunships. At least a few battles on land. And once he lands, he has to go get a bite somewhere. So he takes one bite of food in Mexico and realizes how it tastes so much more amazing than any of the food he's ever had, obviously. He's only had white people food so far. And Perry just keeps eating and eating and eating till his stomach just... He also had to have been eating so much fish, right? How did he not die from mercury poisoning, you know what I'm saying? Wait, again? Oh, already. I see. In 1852, U.S. President Millard Fillmore assigned Peiyi the mission to force Japan to open its doors to trade, as the country has been closed to almost all Western countries for almost 200 years. Peiyi then started collecting as much information about Japan as he could, studying what writings he could find on its defense patterns, its culture, its people, and maybe in that process he develops a strange kind of obsession. An obsession that just festers inside him, like this longing manifests as a poison inside him, this desire, it... Wait, I wasn't... Peiyi steps on this enormous rusty nail, and he gets tetanus. Wynn decides never to cut ever, and the nail accidentally stabs him in the... time portal opens and a pterodactyl just flies in at the exact right moment and just... Wait, not down. No, you're right. Up is way more. Sorry, we have to hold right now. Sorry, everybody. Q-Lab, Isadora just got a little upset at us and had to stop, and we wouldn't have been able to move forward. I'm just going to restart Isadora, and we should be fine. Give me 1 second. Yep, we're good. All right, it looks like we should be fine. We'll take it again from the pterodactyl. Okay, we will start in just 2 seconds. Time portal opens and a pterodactyl just flies in at the exact right moment and just... Wait, not down. Oh, you're right. Up is way more. Like any particular kind or... Oh. Well, hey, could you really die of... What? Oh, don't... Oh, God. Okay, so... Just as Peiyi arrives in Japan, right before he lands, he
slips on a banana peel and falls through a...
Hello. How are you?
I am Commodore Matthew Peiyi.
Are you Commodore Matthew Peiyi?
I am Commodore Matthew Peiyi.
Are you Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who fought in the War of 1812, thereby expanding of the American Empire further into indigenous peoples' lands?
I am Commodore Matthew Peiyi.
Are you Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who worked for the American Colonization Society, an organization that believed that formerly enslaved peoples should not live in the United States, thereby further preventing black liberation?
I am Commodore
Are
Matthew...
you Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who claimed Key West for the United States, thereby refusing to acknowledge the people of the Kulasa and Tequesta tribes, whose land it actually was?
I am Commodore Matthew...
Are you Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who fought in the Mexican-American War, thereby killing a large number of innocent Mexican civilians, and even further expanding the American Empire?
I
Are
am
you Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who, with cannons and guns, with threat of invasion and attack, forcibly opened Japan to trade with the United States, thereby starting Japan's westernization and militarization?
I am Commodore Matthew Peiyi.
Thank you, Mr. Peiyi. As you have confirmed your identity, this conversation will now proceed to kill you. Through this conversation, you will realize all the different ways you have contributed to white supremacy, mass death, and cultural erasure. All the different ways you have harmed communities who continue to be oppressed by the American Empire, all the different ways in which your life embodied colonization. This realization, the insurmountable amount of guilt and despair and anger and anguish, the pain that you feel about all the different lives you've destroyed, it will kill you, it will eat you alive. It will literally eat you alive.
Ah! I'm feeling the pain. But you said it literally eats him alive. Even though you said literally. Yeah, sure.
This realization, the insurmountable amount of guilt and despair and anger and anguish, the pain that you feel about all the different lives you've destroyed, it will kill you, it will eat you alive. It will literally eat you alive.
Well, I'm not, because I'm an actor. So you want a realistic performance of the pain of remorse. Okay.
In anguish, the pain that you feel about all the different lives you've destroyed, it will kill you, it will eat you alive. It will literally eat you alive.
Would he, though? Yes, I would, but I'm not Matthew Perry. Wow. Yeah, I'm just saying, Commodore Matthew Perry, not the actor, he had options. And of all the different options, he chose a life path where he agreed to murder and threaten people and take land on behalf of America. But, I think he understood what he was doing. He just didn't have the capacity to care, so to realistically portray him as feeling pain for causing pain is impossible. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself for a 17-page YouTube theater thingy. Also, you already evoked the man's death 29 times. I think it's pretty violent. Fictionally killing a nasty colonizer who's long gone is very different from threatening an entire country with giant gunboats to change its way of existing just for monetary and cultural exploitation. Well, yes, he did a boatload of bad business, but the opening of Japan was the big one. Gee, I wonder where they learned how to be colonizers from. Look, I don't want to play a what's worse. I said opening Japan was a big one because, well, it's the one that affected you the most. And of all the many, he's the one whose legacy directly impacted you. Why are you trying to minimize that? Then take back the power. Take back the space. Take up all the space and power. That's really fair. If catharsis is what you want, maybe you should kill him by gun. I mean, most of the deaths you mentioned are accidental, circumstantial, except for the animals. Yeah, because whales are majestic and peaceful. I got it. But guns are intentional. And it would be quick and simple. And it would use his own tool against him. Okay. Well, then what do you want to do now? Could have. No, but being lost at sea doesn't necessarily mean death. He could have just, lost his way. Sometimes when people say lost at sea, they just mean vanish.
Growing up, my parents would take me to Japan once a year, and my whole extended family and I would gather together for 1 week at this one inn by this one beach. I always had a really hard time enjoying that week, mostly because I was a huge brat. I would complain about how long it would take to get there, that the inn was crusty, that the beach was dirty, and the beach was dirty. I would always get a splinter or get a cut from broken glass whenever I walked on it. But it was also hard because I would be spending time with people who I understood to be my family, but who felt like strangers to me. I mean, I only saw them once a year. They knew each other. They were family. I was just kind of also there, invading their... Anyway, because of that experience, I always thought that I hated beaches and seas and anything ocean related whatsoever, but that was quite silly of me because now I am always looking for the sea, or at least the smell of the sea. everywhere I go, I'm craving it. I'm hunting for it. Even when I'm somewhere landlocked, I'll look for an aquarium or some kind of fish market. I recognize now that having a really strong connection with my heritage, growing up and experiencing two countries, is an immense privilege. But it was really hard to be appreciative of it at the time, because I would spend all my time with this family that made me feel like a stranger, and then I would come home here and be told in all the different ways that I don't belong here either. I think that I'm always looking for the smell of the sea, the sea air, because I'm trying to go back to those once-a-year weeks and tell my younger self, appreciate this, really appreciate this. Because then maybe you will stay in Japanese school and learn all the kanji. And maybe you won't yell at your mom for not speaking English in front of your friends. And maybe you won't spend hours looking at yourself in the mirror wondering why you couldn't have a real nose or real eyes. And maybe you wouldn't have to learn how to make an origami whale for this piece, because you will have already learned, and you would have remembered. Or, you know, maybe I'm always looking for the smell of the sea, because sea air really is good for your health. Higashizumu.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, so much for joining us here tonight for all the ways Commodore Matthew Peiyi could have died before opening Japan, but didn't, by Julia Izumi. And so thrilled that we've got Julia and Katie Rose and Caroline, our animator. Maybe that's it. Maybe some surprise guests, who knows, that are going to be joining us here for a little conversation on Zoom. And I'm going to go get them as I talk to you. Anyway, I appreciate all of you bearing with us for the technical difficulties. It happens, particularly as it gets hotter. We're always doing sort of more and more technically advanced work, and my computer's from 2014. So that's, the way it goes. Anyway, I am logging in right now. Oh, we will have a surprise guest. Oh, wonderful. So give me 1 second as I remember how to do this. Every 3 weeks, I have to remind myself. And all right, we are all set. I am so thrilled to welcome the team behind all the different ways. And here they are. Katie Rose, you might want to jump in. I have to get my headphones. As always.
Hey.
Oh, hold on. Yep. As always. All right, go for it.
Hi, Josh.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you yet, but I will.
Right.
Okay, now I can hear you. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Beautiful.
Aw, thanks. And Julia, beautifully done as well. I'm going to get in performance mode as fast as possible. I know we're a little skippy right now. Katie Rose, would you get everyone introduced?
I would love that. Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Rose McLaughlin. I'm the co-creative director of Theater in Quarantine. We're so happy that you're here tonight for this beautiful piece. We'll go around and introduce ourselves. And then, like Josh said, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Julia, do you want to go first? Just introduce who you are, what you did on the show.
Yeah, sure. So yes, I'm Julia Izumi. I wrote the play with lovely invitation from New George's. Yeah, and I was also sort of in it. I guess I was in it. I just refused to accept
it. Susan, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Susan Bernfield, and I'm the artistic director / producer at New George's. So we're co-producing with you, and really you invited us to co-produce, which was the thrill of my life, honestly. And this was amazing and beautiful, and I'm just so happy.
Thank you so much, Susan. Yeah, it's been such a joy to work with an organization that not only has followed us from sort of the beginning, but also just been so supportive and also introduced us to Julia. Caroline, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Caroline Voagen Nelson, and I was the animator on this piece. And I'm in my studio right now, so you can see the setup behind of doing the stop motion with green screen or red screen sometimes. And yeah, I just really loved working on this piece. It was really, really a joy.
Thank you. I'm so happy that you're in your studio. Sorry, go Josh.
Oh, no, I just want to get it out there that we're thrilled to answer any questions that you might have. So if you have any questions, or if you're interested in hearing about the process or about the project, please throw it into the chat, which we're monitoring vigorously, and we'll answer that. So sorry to interrupt you, Katie Rose. Jump right in there.
No, also I love your outfit. It's just
it is pure sweat at this point.
Yes. So
99% water.
Well, there is one chat. I'll wait for the rest of you audience members to please think of a question if you want. Which is Sonya asked, Julia is doing all the live typing, right?
Yes, with much trepidation. It is I typing. Not all the text is me, but anytime it was like typing movement, that was me. Which I don't know why there was like so many. There was also like so many typos in the beginning. I don't know what was happening there. The liveness, all the typoing.
But it's so much, I mean, it's a lot of pressure to type in front of an audience.
It's very weird. I thought I don't have to show my face at all during that time. So I thought that I could be hidden and that I would be spared the pressure and the embarrassment. But no, I was so nervous. typing
a lot of pressure, but I feel like this was the first time I really heard the typing and the sort of the emotional quality of the typing. And I think that I'm just thanks to being that the time that it takes to do that is so compelling and so beautiful, that you can sort of feel the anxiety within it that I would be feeling if I was the typer. At the same time, the impression is so huge and it doesn't matter.
Yes, it takes so. I'm also just major kudos to Josh for figuring out how that whole contraption of me typing live works.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if you really appreciate it yet. I mean, I think we all came up with a bunch of different ways to do it, and I proposed live typing, which I think was probably the most difficult thing we could have attempted, and that's. But I love it, honestly, echoing what Susan just said. And to me, it's, it takes, we talk about liveness a lot here and how hard it is to make a human seem live in this space. And there was something really exciting about the challenge of treating something that isn't even human, just text, pure text, and trying to endow that with a sense of humanity. And I really... just being able to like hear you type and hear your breathing, I hear a lot of breathing. I don't know if you do, but it's really wonderful.
It's so beautiful, especially when Julia. I know this is frustrating for you, but when you get particularly frustrated with yourself, you just like let out a sigh that we all just feel in our bones, and like Josh said, it makes us remember that what's happening is live, and it just sort of like brings it to a more human level versus like the film realm when like it has to be perfect. Mm-hmm. So Rachel, I hope that answered your question.
Mm-hmm. Now we've got a bunch of questions here. I'm going to sort of consolidate a little bit because first off, so Julia, we're going to get to your questions, multiple Julias. And Joey, has the closet always had a cat flap? Not always, but, for the past couple of months, during blood meal for certain. But we don't use it. It always had a
flap, but it didn't necessarily, you used to not be able to walk through it.
Yeah. But I want to get to this question from New York Theater. Did Julia write this play for this presentation? And I want to speak a bit to like the origins of this particular project. And so would you, like, Susan, talk to us a little bit about, like, how you know Julia and brought her into the fold?
Sure. I met Julia at her Brown MFA, at a Brown MFA reading that actually was not hers, but I did promise to and read her thesis play and met with Julia after that. And then Julia became very quickly in the 2020 cohort, which is continuing to 2021, of something called our Audrey residency program, in which people get to work on something for 3 weeks in our workspace, the room, and then there's a community component to it. Of course, right after that started, everything came crashing down. And so that piece, which is about Akira Kurosawa and yogurt, Julia's whole idea was, I want to get in a space and like write something in a space as opposed to just like sitting and writing it myself. And so that hasn't happened yet, though we did watch one of the best films I've ever seen in my life. It's a Kurosawa film that Joy is going to remember the title and I cannot. But, and so, I mean, when you came to us and said, we want to work on this and it involves a commission, everyone, Sonya Sobieski, who's watching and is our new play advocate, Deadria Harrington, our associate director producer, we're like, who should do this? And everyone said Julia, because Julia's imagination is so specific. We really wanted a long title. I think that's really what was going on there. Like, there isn't a long title. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. And so we asked Julia and she kindly said that she would do it, which is amazing. And that was in like November, maybe. It seems, I don't know how it suddenly is.
It was like a million years ago, but it was obviously less than a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we met up and everything. The rest is history.
Ah. So Julia, you did, we spent like a month or so kind of talking back and forth and going through drafts, but I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about like what was it like writing for this particularly strange setup we have here, and if you also want to hit on Julia's other questions about what it's like to write for yourself, you know. Go.
Yeah, totally. Susan, that film was Ikiru that I made everybody.
I cannot recommend it highly enough. Life changing. Okay, go ahead.
It's really long, much like the titles of my pieces. I think, you know, it's funny because the Akira Kurosawa piece is also a long title. It's also sort of a part of a, like, it's not really a trilogy, but it's like I had this plan to write 3 plays about 3 very significant Japanese artists, people, where supposedly I play that famous Japanese artist person, just like someone who really impacted the world. And so the first piece of that is called Meet Murasaki Shikibu, followed by book signing and other things. And then the second piece is Akira Kurosawa explains his movies and yogurt with live and active cultures. And the third piece, I don't have a title yet, but I'm planning on it being about Japanese Japanese baseball players who come and play in the American leagues. New George's was very much like, we thought of you because of Kurosawa. If you want to do part of Kurosawa, that's sort of open. And I was like, well, I feel like if I were to do Kurosawa, like I would need to be Kurosawa, and I don't know if I like want to quite learn everything that Josh is doing. Much as it is, I'm sure, amazing and magical. I was like, I don't know if I can handle all of that quite yet. But I was sort of thinking about, and I was sort of in reflection thinking about how like, this is sort of a like, if that was like a set of 3 plays, then like this is kind of like a 0.5 or like maybe like a negative 0.5 about like an American who has a very big impact on Japan. And then I think I said this somewhere else, but I just, I thought of that title much like the Akira Kurosawa title. I just thought of it one day, just like trying to fall asleep, and I thought it was funny, and I'm sort of the awful kind of writer who like writes based on a funny title and no actual content. But in thinking about it's sort of some of the great performances that have happened in the closet, as we were sort of talking about, what the closet can do and the closet is good at. It was all about being able to be really imaginative and also doing things that sometimes like doing like impossible things or like impossible stage directions. And I was like, what if Josh died like 30 times? If we found out like 30 different ways to kill him. And he just died all these different ways. Like that sounds like that could be a fun challenge for the closet. So yeah, that's sort of where it started.
And now, were you always in the piece yourself?
Oh, right. Yes. And that question, yeah, that Julia asked too. I wasn't always in the piece. I can't remember now. I'm like trying to remember what the first draft was. I guess I was in that one too. I guess I would always kind of like found a way to like sneak into the piece. Mm-hmm. Sort of in alignment of this like weird little trilogy thingy that I'm writing. But yeah, I think you know, at a certain point I was I had sort of my own frustrations, and it was just, and I just like couldn't figure out a way to feel to process everything without actually. I was sort of using the play to process a lot of emotion and thought, and I was like, at a certain point I was like, I can't mask this with death. I have to actually talk about it. So that's sort of how it kind of came into it. And yeah, writing for myself is always, I've done it before. I'll probably do it again. It's kind of, and I know Susan also is someone who does this too. Yeah, it's kind of, and we also just in our recent, am I not allowed to say this? In our recent Audrey meeting, we talked about this sort of very concept of like what it is to sort of be, to be a little autobiographical in your plays. Yeah, it's just kind of this funny, it's sort of a nice sort of relief in some ways, because it's like you don't have to put up all these walls and these like layers of translation in order to get to the heart of it. And it is also like this kind of like a scary and strange thing, and kind of a weird and scary thing to sort of write a version of yourself too. So yeah. That was a very rambly answer, I feel like.
No, it's great. I mean, speaking about like making, bringing life to the non-human, and also all of these deaths. As soon as Katie Rose and I saw this script, we immediately were like, well, how the hell are we going to do any of that? Which is why we contacted Caroline, whose work I had seen through Puppet Playlist, the Sinking Ship folk, who've also worked with us many a time. And Caroline, I just want to, it's been such a pleasure. This is the first time we ever worked together, and you just dove right into the deep end there. All water puns intended. So, speak to us a little bit about the process of putting this all together. I'll start you off, because you said it takes, how long to do a piece of this length?
Well, usually like to make a short film that's a few minutes, it takes years. So, and and you're like, we have 3 weeks and here's the 15-page script. Can you animate it? And you just caught me at this moment where I was like, let's see what happens. Let's do it.
And we're so lucky that you did.
So, and I really, and it was great that it was really wonderful, the creative collaboration and brainstorming of what works, what doesn't. I mean, actually, I don't know if you all, the audience knows this, but the tunnel scene, it's like I literally dug through a book. So it's like literally, it was like shot in camera. And so it was a really wonderful challenge, though, of being like, oh, okay, there's so many deaths, there's so many different characters, and I really love how playful like Julia's script is. It just was really dynamic, all the movements, and we just it was great to brainstorm how can we piece all of this together in a really short period of time.
And just like so brilliant. I'm trying to think of like the first thing that we really figured out, but it was like when the moose arrived, we were like, got it. Here we are. We figured it out.
Totally.
Which is just so good. And also, sort of speaks to the way we work in the closet, which like it has to be collaborative because we're working so quickly. We usually have like such a small team too, where like everyone has to just brainstorm as much as possible to make sure that we can like get all the things done. And it was just like such a thrill. Because when we first talked to Julia, we were like, whatever you can dream up. And then she sent us the script and we're like, oh yeah, okay. She did it. She did what we said. Now we have to figure out how to pull it off. And Caroline, it was like such a joy that you were like, this is gonna be crazy, but I think we can do it. And yeah, it's just so good. I mean, every time the rock happens, I laugh out loud, like in my room by myself. It's just so good.
And yeah, it was like we just happened to have a cannon, so it was just like fortuitous, yeah, and just trying to figure out how do we animate a hurricane? What does a hurricane look like? And getting a bunch of cotton balls and sweeping it around. It was just really fascinating. I mean, what I loved about it was just thinking very quickly and creatively of like what materials do we have around us where that can feel like that scene. And I love that we got to work with paper and the transition to Julia using paper too. So it had that, I love that where she's creating the whale and we see the whale earlier.
Yeah,
I love the cotton balls because they're recognizable. And so it points to the ingenuity happening. And I love the different styles that also emerge, like when the food comes up or the fish and it feels very like Monty Python-esque.
Yeah.
It feels like it goes through and then it gets all goofy. And why not? And I said in the first rehearsal that I sat in, and I felt it tonight so much that it's like having our own yellow submarine. And it's really so delightful and so wonderful. Yay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, it's 8:06, and since it is our first show and we have another one in 54 minutes, we usually cut the first talk back a little bit short, but I want to thank you all for joining us. We will be talking, at liberty after the second show, so feel free to join us then. And of course, we cross our fingers. Usually the 9 p.m. show technically goes quite well. It's always a strange thing. We don't quite get it. We're going to find out. We're going to cross our fingers. We're going to find out. And
this was great. This was great.
It was great. Yeah. It was fairly smooth as far as our tech glitches go. But
we tried something new. It worked really well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to say thank you all. I want to thank you, our those of us, our collaborators, Caroline, Susan, and Julia, and Katie Rose, of course, and all of you who have joined us tonight. So glad you could make it. Please check out the rest of Theater in Quarantine stuff. It's on YouTube. It's right on this channel. Subscribe if you can. We've got another show coming up in 3 weeks. And that's with La Mama and Culture Hub and Caridad Fitch. And we're so excited about that one. I promise it's going to really explode the closet in some really cool ways. And anyway, thank you again. Katie Rose, any last words?
No, thank you again. Tell your friends to join at 9 o'clock. And if we didn't answer your question, sorry, but come back at 9 o'clock and ask it again. And I promise you will answer it this time.
Yeah, we'll answer. I'll get a martini and everything. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, Josh has to go like preset his shrimp cocktail now.
Yeah, it's true. So much shrimp tonight.
So much shrimp cocktail.
Have a great night, everyone. Be well. Get the vaccine if you haven't already. All right. Have a good one.